We've got half a dozen teen mentors here from the Interact group, the Rotary Club for age 12 to 18. And I'd like the teen mentors to raise their hand, please. These are the greeters tonight. Hi, thank you. Yeah. So after the presentations, they are going to be staffing this Q&A kiosk to my right. I hope you stop by and visit them. They've also got the fourth puzzle piece, the problem-solving puzzle piece. Two of them are going to present shortly. There are several folks that are either here or had planned to get through traffic to be here. So I did not yet say hello to Nick Covino. Is Nick Covino here? Representing Nick Covino is Margaret Hanna. Margaret, raise your hand. Hi. She's Executive Director of the Friedman Center for Child and Family Development at the Mass School of Professional Psychology. Also, we've got the head of psychiatry for Newton Wellesley Hospital here, Susan Swick. Thank you for being here. Charlie Baker Sr., very active with McLean Hospital, and a very proud father of Governor Charlie Baker is here. Thank you for being here. And thank you for your support of McLean Hospital and your leadership there. His passion is finding a cure for Alzheimer's, and anyone with an interest in that should speak with Charlie tonight. From Boston Children's Hospital, we've got Shella Denery, who runs the Boston Children's Neighborhood Partnership. Shella, where are you? Hi. Also, with Shella's group is Vanessa Prosper, psychologist doing training around break free from depression, and Molly Jordan, who makes it all happen and reaches out to follow up with schools to see if they completed it and what the results were. So thank you for being here. Everyone here tonight, thank you so much for being here. Happy New Year. We've got a lot of things to celebrate. I am particularly happy that we're able to do a theme this year around symbols of wellness. The theme last year was 22. I'll explain that in a second. The 22 theme last year was selected because 22 kids getting better coping skills prevents a case of anxiety or depression from even occurring. Basically, the kids get better skills to balance life's worries before it turns into something overwhelming. The kids got better connectedness, communication, problem solving, and self-awareness. And those are the things that are pretty easily taught. There weren't tools to teach them until very recently. Now there's very good tools. Rather than attempting to have therapists talk to kids, there are resources that are actually going to be talked about here tonight. Adolescent Wellness leveraged some collaborations to get 3 things done in the past year for the 22 project. One was to bring the Break Free from Depression curriculum beyond Massachusetts. And you're going to hear speakers talking about that a little bit later tonight. Also, a toolkit was developed with teen mentors to bring it to any community that has an interest. Any community that has teens interested in a wellness project can fire that up through their local Rotary Club. There's also a brand new training library for adults to figure out a kids resource called Yville. So these coping skills that we're talking about tonight are actually available in the form of a game, a virtual world for ages 8 to 15. And the kids actually get around it easier than adults to help adults become comfortable understanding it and introducing it to kids. There's now a training kit for adults. So the person who was involved in all 3 of those projects, the person who really made them happen, was Dr. Nadja Riley. And I'm delighted that Nadja is here to speak tonight. Please welcome Nadja Riley. So Nadja's an author, documentary producer, clinician, professor, and associate director of the Friedman Center over at MSPP.
Well, welcome everybody, and I'm so glad to be able to have a little bit of time to talk to you about a wonderful collaboration that's been going on between the Friedman Center at MSPP and Adolescent Wellness. As Bob mentioned, we have been working together for a bit of time with peers around a peer leadership model, really thinking about ways to increase knowledge about how to promote emotional health and wellness, thinking about how to get kids that are really interested in the topic more involved in collaborating with other kids in schools and community settings. And we've been very fortunate this year to find a group of very dedicated teens that are part of the Interact Club, and it's been just such a pleasure to work with them. Somewhere along the way, we found a wonderful opportunity to work with another great group of kids from Puerto Rico. And so tonight I'll tell you a little bit about the work that we've been doing together with them. So Rotary has had for a long time the mission of really thinking about how to promote wellness overall in the community, really how to leverage the power of people wanting to help each other and really thinking about how to make things better from a health and from a mental health and wellness perspective. So there was this wonderful opportunity to connect clubs from different areas, not just the club here in Wellesley, but really to reach out to other clubs and really focus on this mission of promoting emotional health and wellness. The project was of particular interest to Margaret Hanna, who's the executive director of the Friedman Center, and to me because really the center is committed to working around mental health promotion and prevention, so it seemed like a wonderful fit for the mission of MSPP. And so what we decided to do was trying to figure out how to get these kids who are so invested in being part of the Interact Club, which is the youth version of the Rotary Club, to really be a part of this. And one of the things that we found is that while we talked about emotional health and wellness, everybody said, yes, that's wonderful, we need to do that, but we also need to address sort of the questions about more immediate concerns that they have right now, taking a look at depression and anxiety, and we don't know how to do that. And more importantly, we don't have a lot of people trained in our school and communities to be able to even initiate these conversations with the kids. So this is where the project continued to evolve. So Bob met two people who have been key to this project. One is Jorge Gonzalez, who is the president of the San Juan Rotary Club, and Dr. Johnny Rulan, who is actually the former Secretary of Health in Puerto Rico, and who's very invested in preventive medicine. So he was particularly interested in helping out with this project. So we had the commitment of 4 schools, and you know, again, it's wonderful to be able to make connections with people who are really invested in promoting mental health and wellness. And these 4 schools kind of volunteered and said, we'll do whatever you guys want us to do around emotional health and wellness. But can you help us with what's going on, because our students are really stressed and they're having a lot of anxiety and they're experiencing a lot of depression, and we don't quite know what to do. And so I said, I know a really good tool that might help with that. And my colleagues at Children's Hospital with Break Free from Depression curriculum actually provided a wonderful tool to be able to address that immediate concern that they had. And then we tailored how to work with them around continuing to implement other activities like teacher training and the peer leadership to change the culture of the school, really to be able to promote more of the conversation. So El Liceo Ponceño was one of the schools, and that's a school in Ponce, which is one of the largest cities in Puerto Rico. And coincidentally, we were there to celebrate their 100th year anniversary, which was really exciting to be able to do that. And that was one of the schools that's committed. The other one is Tasis Dorado, and it's an independent school, and again, we were there to learn that they had just won their underwater robotics competition, which was really exciting. We were there, good timing. That's another school that has already been very mindful of what's going on for their students from a mental health perspective, but wanted to do so much more proactively from a prevention perspective. Then we have the Robinson School, which is another private school, and they are amazing. And again, talking about coincidences, my dad actually graduated from Robinson School, so it was an honor for me to be able to go there. And then we have the Commonwealth Parkville School, and they have 2 different campuses. This one was the one in Condado, and they also were very interested in having their kids really be able to do a lot of work with their little ones, because that's been a model that they work with already. So then we met with the Rotary Club of San Juan, a lot of their other members, to be able to have other members, not the ones directly working with the schools, but overall it's a very large club, and they really wanted to learn more about the concept of prevention and really thinking about what they could do in their own roles as Rotarians in terms of promoting health and wellness. So then we come to really the heart of the project, which are the kids and the Interact members. And so what happened was that we were able to create this peer leadership model, and the 4 schools in Puerto Rico now have peer leaders that are going to be co-facilitating the Break Free from Depression curriculum with teachers that have been trained in it. And they're also going to be doing their own projects. Part of that involves direct communication with our Interact Club kids, which is amazing. Last week we had our first conversation when everybody participated, and I have to tell you, to hear the energy that was coming across the phone was amazing. To hear the questions that they had and the interactions made me feel like I was just so privileged to be able to be there. So we have one school that's actually implementing the curriculum starting next week, and the other ones will be doing so with at least 1 grade this academic year, and they were already asking questions about what to do for next year. So I think they're in it for the long haul, which is fantastic. And the kids were also very excited about thinking, what other tools can we develop and how can we continue the conversation? And so this is the place where I'm going to turn it over to the Interact peer mentors, because they have found incredible new programs that they're going to be doing. They're already well underway. They're rolling them out. And so I would love for them to come up and tell you all about that. So thank you.
I just want to thank Nadja Riley. She is tireless, she is creative, and we are very grateful. So there's a certificate of appreciation that we're giving Nadja right now. And the Rotary Club of Wellesley does a spring concert, and there is a chance to meet the band afterwards for your entire family. The Sol y Canto concert is May 16th at the Wellesley High School Auditorium, and these are VIP tickets. You are welcome. Thank you so much. The next speakers are with me on the right, Teddy Sevilla and Matthew Tom. They represent the Interact Club, comprised of 20 teens from the greater Boston area. One of the teen mentors is from Boston, and another 2 are from Weston. One is from Sherborne. The bulk are from Wellesley. The teens launched the Wellness Project to help everybody. They recognize, they want us to recognize, they want everybody to recognize that student stress is universal. It's not unique to Wellesley, Wayland, Weston, Boston, Puerto Rico. And it's there when we're adults too, so it's all in how we manage life's worries. They also want us to learn how to normalize conversations on stress and depression. And they want us to learn practical coping skills to manage stress and help prevent those symptoms from occurring. So projects to achieve this locally are on display here in the kiosk that they're staffing after the presentation. In addition to the local projects, you've heard them, you heard Nadja talk about these teens coaching teens in the San Juan School, the Robinson School, and they hope to do that as far and as often as teen groups are interested in doing it with them. So the Adolescent Wellness role in all this was to advise the mentors. I'm also a member of Rotary, so I'm the official Rotary advisor to their Interact Club. Adolescent Wellness also funded the training and toolkit development in hopes that it would be replicated easily and often. The reason we funded the trip to Puerto Rico was to illustrate to any community that it's a matter of choosing to do it. It's self-imposed barriers if you're not doing it already in your community. So 6 days ago, you heard Nadja say that teens did their first remote coaching with 11 teens in San Juan. Please welcome Teddy Sevilla and Matthew Tom.
Hello. Hi. My name's Matthew.
And I'm Teddy.
And the Interact Club of Wellesley presents, Nathan, the Wellness Project. Look how fun that is. So starting off, we have a little game for you guys. I would like your participation, please. So what does Brad Pitt, Jennifer Lawrence, Teddy Sevilla, and last but not least, Matthew Tom, all have in common? Any question or any responses to that? Any guesses? Yeah, true. Yeah, they're all beautiful, yes. All are great actors, I think so. But no, Nathan, could you go to the next slide? We all are go back, Nathan. All are or were high school students. So what we were trying to get at this is, Nathan, you can go next slide, was that, school and all these stress works they're really interrelated and it's universal. So we all have schoolwork, extracurriculars, we're all worrying about our GPA, Ivy League schools, some of us, peer pressure, sports, sleeping, popularity, and then all leads to stress. And really, stress is universal.
So keeping some of that universality in mind, we can take this idea and think that what teens might be experiencing at school in Wellesley or Boston would go to, it would be similar in San Juan or Ponce, Puerto Rico. So our next few slides kind of talk about Bob and Nadja's visits, but Nadja kind of briefed you guys on that, so we'll just breeze through those real quick. So there was a visit to Eliseo Ponce and the Rotary of San Juan, which really helped us establish connections so that we could find a way to implement our Break Free from Depression program. In the Break Free from Depression program, it was developed at Boston Children's Hospital, and it is made for implementation in schools. And it's really great. We use it at Wellesley High School with our sophomore guidance seminars. And it's a great way for kids to learn about depression and coping skills because there's a film and there's discussion components and presentations so that kids kind of get a multimedia approach to learning about depression.
And so I think it's important in society today that we note that, we do have these ideas of, mental illness, this stigma around it. We have like The Silence of the Lambs, Black Swan, American Horror Story. I mean, they're all great films, but they're really not doing anything to, stop this idea of, people not being okay to be with society. And I think that we really kind of need to break that. So what we were really trying to do is encourage conversation, bring awareness, and then therefore break the stigma.
Okay, so in order to do this, our Interact Club has worked on developing 4 major projects that we would kind of reach out to the community and help to complete those 3 goals that Matt just talked about. So our first one is a public art installation, and the idea behind that is really to give a visual representation to the commonalities that teens are experiencing. So for all these projects, actually, except for the documentary, we have little progress stations over there to show what we're working on. Our second project is an interact blogger website. So the idea behind that is making the coping skills and the depression and anxiety coping skills that we teach accessible to many kids from different places, because the internet really is a universal resource. Our third project is a video documentary, and the idea behind this one is we want to make these issues accessible from a teen's viewpoint. So we're trying to give kind of more anecdotal instances so kids can understand and empathize with people through video. And then our fourth project is a fundraising project where we sell merchandise, and that merchandise is intended to have positive messages and include ideas to help kids cope with stress.
But really all we wanted to say was that symbols are universal. And the theme of the event tonight is really just symbols. And so how can we relate to other people, not only in our community, but around the world as well. So thank you.
Would you open these, please? So again, we have a balloon. More importantly, certificate of recognition, and my gratitude personally. Also for you, there are a pair of Rotary Spring concert tickets. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I am serious. Before, as soon as we break from the podium, please do talk with these kids over here. They're pretty remarkable, what they've done already and what they're about to do going forward. Thanks again. Yeah, you're all set. Yeah, thanks. Are you trapped? That's all right. Yeah. Our final speaker tonight is Dr. David DeMaso. He's President Emeritus, American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. He's Psychiatrist in Chief at Boston Children's Hospital. He literally wrote the book on the mind and body connection, both the textbook and the clinical manual of pediatric psychosomatic medicine, mental health consultation with physically ill children and adolescents. He created the first safe website for children to directly learn about their worries, ranging from ADHD and depression to transplant and vascular anomalies. The website's experiencejournal.com. It's largely because of Dr. DeMaso that we're celebrating Symbols of Wellness tonight. 8 years ago, the Wellesley community was in the midst of tragedy. We lost 8 youth to suicide in a 10-year period. And the most I could do at that time was mourn with others. You know, here's a hand-stitched ribbon. Wellesley remembers Jenny, Christine, Tommy, Dan, John E., John B., Katie, Elizabeth. I mean, that's pretty awful. Teens were complaining at that time that adults wouldn't talk about it. Nancy and I hosted the first Winter Blues event in our home 8 years ago. The speaker was Dave DeMaso. He explained that the best way to prevent suicide was to prevent depression. There was no curriculum, but there was knowledge. We asked David to deliver something that any interested community could implement. He helped create a universal preventive intervention called Break Free from Depression. Please welcome Dave DeMaso.
So, good evening. You know, I didn't think I was going to make it here tonight. I got on the road downtown and drove out on the Pike, and I hit a lot of traffic. I don't know if anybody else was on that road. I was on that road with a lot of traffic, and I think I was getting depressed. I was getting maybe even a little anxious, and I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to get there? What's Bob going to think if I'm really late? But I said, no, I kept my hope. and I used my GPS, and the fact that I lived in Wellesley for almost 20 years, I remembered some back roads, and then I got here, and of course I had to use the side parking lot. But I got here, and so I was okay. I felt like I had a direction where I was going. So I'm really glad to be here. But in doing that, it made me think about the words that I would say tonight. Because sometimes I think depression's a little bit like that kind of journey that I just described to you. We know that children and adolescents, teens, I guess I should say teen. What's the accepted word I should use, guys? Whatever I want, okay. It exists. Now, you've heard a statistic people throw out a lot that says 1 out of 5 kids have a diagnosable illness. You've heard that? Most of you heard that? The other big one that people talk about is autism. You hear about that, how the numbers are climbing. It's 1 out of 100 that it's increasing. Do you know how many it is who have depression? 1 out of what? No, more. No, it's actually more. It's 1 out of 50. It's a lot. Yeah, it sounds comparison, but that's still quite a few kids and too many kids. If you throw anxiety, it's 1 out of 30. And so here are illnesses and struggles that kids have that in some ways haven't got as much attention. Now, I'm not minimizing autism and what it means to families, but I'm just saying it's less frequent than this other kinds of problems that kids are having trouble with, and many of them, quite honestly, die from because they do commit suicide. So the fact that you're here is important, and I just want to kind of give you kind of a context, because I think that most depressions are there, and there's a reason for it. And if you actually look at it, you can kind of see what's going on. Yes, some depressions come out of the blue and seem to have nothing, and a lot of times that's largely biologically based. But for kids, a lot of it comes with the reason. And if you look closely, and you even heard some of it from the teens that spoke earlier, but there's learning problems, academic problems can come up, struggles with their peers. You hear about bullying all the time. Family problems, deaths, losses, divorces, substance abuse problems are all happening, let alone witnessing violence. I mean, what is it like for a kid to just pick up the paper yesterday and hear about what happened at the Brigham? Just that kind of violence, let alone the kind of violence for some of our kids that happens right on the street where they live, that kind of idea. So children and adolescents get depressed. Next slide. It's the first time I get to tell Bob what to do, and he does it. You could ask why there's depression. I think we need to realize that it actually, some people think it actually has some evolutionary value to us, that there's a reason that we get depressed, because it sometimes allows one to kind of stop in the midst of stress, to slow down, to catch one's breath, to take a moment, to reflect and to focus and think about what's going on, and then even to choose how to deal with that stress. I like to think that you're kind of thinking about it, but sometimes that stress that we heard about from our teens becomes too great. And that's when you run into disabling anxiety and depression. And the hope is that you can intervene before it gets too big. Next slide. So what happens? We're about prevention, we're about wellness, but let's face it, there's a dark curtain that happens in depression that one needs to think about. You run into, by the way, these notes here that are written here that teens experience, I give a similar kind of talk to our physicians at work. They have those same symptoms, just as some of you may recognize some of those same symptoms. The sadness, the trouble concentrating, the ability to work, to do the kind of things that you normally do, or to function in school. Even weight and appetite changes, up or down, happen. People run into trouble misusing drugs. There's certainly another factor that goes on, as well as trouble with peers. One of my mentors always spoke of suicide as a social deficiency disease. People become very isolated in the midst of it, let alone the trouble in families and obviously suicidal ideation. There's a dark curtain that happens with depression. That's the curtain that we're trying to get rid of. So driving for the horizon. I told you I was driving in, right? Right? So do you know what it takes to drive good? I mean, to really drive if you want to get, You know, usually how do you keep a car from weaving all over the road? How do you keep a car weaving?
Put in your mic, please.
Keep the mic, I'm sorry. It's such a long room. So a car weaves all over the road if you look straight down and you just look at the problems facing you. A car you can drive straight by looking farther into the horizon if you're aiming for something. So tonight I told you I was dealing with traffic, I was dealing with my GPS, but I had a goal and an aim. I was aiming to get here to Wellesley to meet with you folks. Next slide. So when you're driving and you've got depression, you got no horizon, you're not aiming for anything, that's what happens. And you're under stress, and there's a tendency not to see anything positive. One focuses on the negative, and you focus on the moment. And in many ways, one's personal needs are completely overwhelmed, and sometimes I can't even think about what they need to do for themselves. And one isolates. Slide. So what does one do? How do you drive out of depression? So if you step back, there are two things that I think are incredibly important to drive out of depression. One is hopefulness, and the other is problem solving. Remember, I told you I was hopeful that I would get here, and I told you I was trying to use my GPS and other things to problem solve. And problem solving is particularly key because it involves an individual's facing their problems, trying to solve them, think about them, come up with something about them. If you heard the stories, if you look closely at Break Free from Depression, you're going to hear about people coming up with ways and things to do. You heard about the teens talking about learning things to do. That's what that's about. Part of what we're doing in these kind of interventions is problem solving, teaching problem solving. Resiliency, if you look at the literature, requires self-understanding. The more you understand about why you're doing something, the more you can be resilient to what's going on. The more you understand what others are doing, the more resilient you can be. So if you look at all the interventions that we're talking about, a lot of them have to do with self-understanding. How do you understand all those dark clouds that might be coming up? And hopefully you might get to those dark clouds long before you become troubled and disabled, that you can identify them earlier and quicker and make connections with all the kind of coping skills that are being taught. So, and with that kind of, you heard about things. I often break them down into problem solving and emotional based problem solving. Okay, what's a problem solving approach? Problem solving approach is that I put my GPS and I programmed a detour in to see if that would work, and it worked. That was a problem. I fixed my problem. Emotion coping was when I got to that place, there was too many cars and I had to sit in line anyway, so I had to sit there and say, okay, I'll eventually get there. They probably won't start right at 6 o'clock. They'll start probably 6:45, somewhere in there. So I did emotion coping. When you approach that kind of problem solving, you develop mastery as you develop.
Can you speak into the mic?
I'm sorry. As you do problem solving, you develop mastery, and with mastery, you build hope and that hopefulness. And so that's the combination of what's happening. And when you see young folks get up in front of you and talk like that, to me, having been doing this work for 35 years and dealing with stigma, it gives me really great hope when they're up here talking like they're doing. And it makes a tremendous, tremendous difference, guys. Really great things. This program now has reached over 12,000 kids. So we've really been able to get out there and do stuff. Next slide. So I'd just like to end by, again, commenting. I've talked about these interventions, but if you look at interventions across the board, all the different kinds that are talked about, they often are based on hopefulness and problem solving as the key underlying components. I used that top quote because that was my father actually died a week ago, and that was a quote he used to tell me all the time, that you have to think healthy to be healthy and then keep moving. He was 93 years old, and that man kept moving until he was 93 years of age. But that's part of what happens and helps with depression, is you have to think healthy, and that's part of what happens in these kind of interventions that go on. I haven't emphasized as much, but there are certainly challenges. And the challenges sometimes are just coming to some sort of self-understanding, such as understanding I can't keep this microphone up here. It's heavier than you might think. But there's an aspect of promoting self-attunement, self-understanding importance that's really key. And sometimes it's difficult to get people to understand that, and they reject it. And that's where sometimes peers can sometimes break through that. And finally, there's just the age-old problem, which is the first question I had tonight, which has to do with access. How do you get anybody to these interventions? How do you get people to actually, who can you get to see what, and are there the interventions being provided? There's still tremendous access problems in getting the available services for these youngsters. And I would emphasize it's even harder to get the prevention services that are so critical, because I would love to get to the kids before they get to the point that the dark curtain is over, long before that, while you can have access and get to them closer. And that's been the hope, and I think, quite honestly, the foundation of what Bob Anthony's been trying to do here is to get to people early, faster, and emphasize wellness. So I will end at that, and I apologize I can't keep this microphone up as I can, particularly those in the back and to you over here. But thank you very much for listening.
A gift for Dr. DeMaso, again, in appreciation for giving us your time tonight.
No tickets?
That can be arranged. We happen to have ticket sales right over here tonight through the teen mentors.
Oh, that's very nice, Bob. Oh, that's great.
So would you please read that?
David R. DeMaso, 10,000 thanks, Adolescent Wellness.
So I should have had 12,000 thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you will each visit Dr. DeMaso at this little kiosk we call the school kiosk. I hope you will each visit Dr. Riley at the little kiosk we call the home kiosk. Those are the other balloons in the middle of the aisle, middle of the wall, excuse me. And I have one more kiosk over here where the current teen mentors are standing or are about to stand. That's also where you get the missing puzzle piece for problem solving. And you can order a t-shirt. So if you want to expand the reach of Adolescent Wellness, volunteer your time. We're an all-volunteer organization, or leave a check in the box outside the door. Thank you so much for being here. Have fun.
I first became involved with Adolescent Wellness when the organization was responding to a community need around suicide prevention. Since then, we've focused on developing peer leadership models, developing skills in teenagers and middle schoolers. And right now I'm involved with the current peer leadership group that is focusing around the Interact group associated with Rotary. And we're working on developing emotional health and wellness programming to reduce stigma in the community, to promote more conversations about mental health and wellness, and to have kids who develop skills that they can then train other kids in. The development of mood disorders in children, adolescents, and adults is actually due to a combination of different factors. It is a biological illness, so we know that there's a change in the chemistry in the brain that's occurring, but there are also other factors that play a role, whether they're due to social factors like bullying or separation or loss, or maybe psychological factors like poor self-esteem or lack of coping. And so really we're trying to target the pieces that have to do with psychological and social to promote more protective factors to really help kids who might be struggling in other areas.
We're all different. Kids are different. So you can take the same stress, the same event, put different children in that situation, and each of them can react differently. One child may not experience depression, another child may experience depression, another child may experience anxiety. So it really varies on the individual child as to what they might actually deal with at the time of an event or a stress that goes on. There are different types of treatment for kids. There's treatment that's talk therapy, and there's medication therapy. Medication therapy can be helpful, but quite honestly, it's not always the most effective. We do find that talk therapy can be incredibly helpful. It's oftentimes the first line. So you have to think about both. Sometimes we start with the talk therapy, and if it doesn't succeed, you might add in some medication.